Hello, everyone, and welcome back to King's Advisors. We have some news concerning the next story from George R.R. Martin's Westeros to hit the small screen. As we've talked about before, HBO is currently working on several shows to continue the story of Westeros. We've talked about The Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which will hopefully be starting production just as House of the Dragon Season 2 starts airing in early summer. There's also been reports about the Sea Snake show now being an animated show. There's also been reports about some animated shows that are going to be kind of adult themed. Now, what's weird about this is Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon are already, pretty adult. So I don't understand if this is meaning that it's going to be like Family Guy and, South Park adult, or if it's going to be some other form of adult entertainment. So I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. And of course, we have the Snow series. This is supposed to be a sequel show to Game of Thrones that takes place after season 8. And honestly, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I kind of don't want to see anything take place after season 8 or after Game of Thrones in general until George finishes writing the books. I think I would much rather know what the definitive ending is and have stuff based off of that rather than season 7 and 8 and our own head canons. I think that would create quite a lot of, let's call it, annoyance and anger in the fan base. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today, we're talking about their other show, Aegon's Conquest. So we know that this is going to be its own show. It's not going to bear the title House of the Dragon. I've heard different people say that they think what HBO should do or what they are going to do is keep House of the Dragon as the overall title of the Targaryen stories, and then have each couple seasons broken apart in their own names, sort of like the Infinity Saga in the MCU. So these first 4 seasons of House of the Dragon would be called House of the Dragon, The Dance of Dragons. If the next thing is the Blackfire Rebellions, House of the Dragon, the Blackfire Rebellions. I don't think that's a great idea. I think they should just have their own show. Obviously, with this being the kickoff of the House of the Dragon, meaning the Targaryen dynasty in Westeros, you can't just call it House of the Dragon. So we see here it says that Aegon's Conquest spinoff in the works from the Batman Part 2 writer. So that's Mattson Tomlin. Mattson Tomlin was a non-credited writer on the Batman. We can see right here, Matt Reeves is the Batman, and is co-writing its upcoming sequel, The Batman Part 2. He also wrote the Keanu Reeves' action comic adaptation, BRZRKR, and an animated Terminator series, which he is also showrunning for Netflix. Now, I've talked about this Terminator series, I think once, probably 4 months ago, maybe on, I think, the second Witten I ever did. There wasn't a lot of information for it back then, and I'm not sure if there's any information yet. I'm not really excited for this. I think Terminator is something that needs to be left alone. But I think the reason that I'm not excited is just because it's Terminator. Terminator has been really kind of destroyed over the last decade. So there's a little bit of worry there. Tomlin is getting bigger and more important jobs. We can look at his IMDb page here and see that of the writing credits he has, I don't actually think I know any of these. Now, that doesn't necessarily say anything. There's a lot of good stuff out there that I haven't watched, but there's a lot of bad stuff out there that I haven't watched. So the lack of things that I've even heard about kind of concerns me. I was thinking, what is it that he did on the Batman that Warner clearly has faith in him to bring him back and have him co-write the sequel? Obviously, the story is going to follow Aegon's Conquest and tell the story of, I love how they say here, the Targaryens' bloody and brutal conquest of Westeros. To be fair, there's only really, if I'm remembering it correctly, 3 battles. There's a battle at the very beginning against the Stormlords. There's a battle. There's the burning of Harrenhal, and then I believe there's a battle against the Westerlands. The other two kingdoms, the North and the Vale, surrender pretty quickly. I am very excited for this show. The Conquering, I think, is one of the cooler A Song of Ice and Fire stories that George has given us. It's also a completed story. So we'll actually get to see the entire story, which is, rare for George. I'm excited to see Aegon. I'm excited to see his sister wives, Rhaenys and Visenya. And of course, we get to see Balerion the Black Dread. We've seen his skull several times throughout Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, but to finally be able to see the massiveness of that, it reminds me of the Christopher Paolini stories, Aragon, Inheritance, Eldest, and Basinger, where they describe Shrukin, King Galbatorix's dragon, as this giant black dragon. And you don't really understand how big he is until you finally see the description. And it's like his wings cover up the moon. It's like, holy crap. So I'm looking forward to finally seeing this massive dragon on screen. Now, there have been a couple of fan casts as this news has come out over the last couple of days. We've got this guy, Harry Goodwins, who has been fan cast as Aegon, which is not the worst fan casting I've ever seen. He actually does look a lot like the art for Aegon the First on a wiki of Ice and Fire. If we see here, if we go back and forth between these two guys, they look a lot alike. I think looks matter in this kind of thing. We've also seen some castings for Visenya and Rhaenys, and I'm less okay with those. One of them was Anna Taylor-Joy, however you say her name, and I just don't think she looks like a Targaryen. I think, like I said, with this guy, looks are important in this kind of thing, and I think that's one of the ways you bring in the audience. Having said that, with a show like this, I don't really think you need a huge name. I think what you could probably do is have a big name for someone who's either going to play the Stormlord or maybe the Stark. I think it's possible that you could have this big name to kind of put on your poster, but isn't going to either cost you a lot of money because you're not going to use him a lot, or isn't going to take away from what the story really is. And that's kind of what they did with Sean Bean in the first season of Game of Thrones. He was a big name that kind of brought in the audience, but it didn't become the Sean Bean show. I'm curious, everyone, what do you think about this? Are you excited for Aegon's Conquest? Do you think that they should be going in a different direction? I've talked to a lot of people about, could you do a movie for any story in Westeros? So I'm curious what your thoughts are. Are there any actors or actresses you think should play any of these roles? Like, just hands down, they need to be this role. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on Twitter at KingsAdvisors_.